In today's video, we're going to be talking about how to use solar panels to harness the power of the sun to power your RV. Whether you already bought an RV with solar on it and you're thinking about expanding, or you're starting from scratch, hopefully these basics will help you get an understanding of exactly what's going on. So let's get to it. Hey guys, I'm Chris. This is Salty Trips channel, and we're all about RV life, full-time, trucks, travel, towing, all that mess. And today we are going to be going over the basics of harnessing the power of the sun to power your RV. And if we're going to do this, talk about the basics, we're going to have to start from the beginning. What exactly powers your RV? Well, there's two different kinds of power. There's alternating current, AC, and direct current, DC. And alternating current is the power you get from the grid that powers like your house, all the outlets and stuff like that. That's alternating current. The current actually flows back and forth about 60 times per second in each direction. That's what AC power is. DC power is what comes from a battery. It flows in one direction only. You can't power DC devices with AC power, and you can't power AC devices with DC power. And that's where the RVs kind of get complicated, because like with your house, it only relies on AC power. But where an RV, it uses both. It has AC and DC power, which when you hook to the pedestal, that's where you get your AC power from. And that powers things like your outlets, your microwave, your hair dryer, electric furnace, all those things. And then the DC power provides, usually 12 volt, provides power to like your lights, your water pump, your propane heater. So when you open up your breaker panel, you'll see one half of that is breakers, which are all your AC current loads. And then you'll see a bunch of little fuses on one side, and those will be all your direct current that comes from your battery. That what powers all those things. And when it comes to electricity, there's three main things you need to understand about it: volts, amps, and wattage. And what are those? Volts are kind of like, the best way to explain to it is like a water hose, how much pressure you're putting on it. And amps is how much current is going through. And wattage is a combination of volts and amps. So if you take volts times amps, that'll equal your wattage. Volts and amps are conversely proportional to the wattage. So if you have 120 volts and 10 amps, that's 1200 watts. And if you have 12 volts at 100 amps, that's also 1200 watts. As the volts go down, the amps go up for the same amount of wattage, and vice versa. As the volts go up, the amperage goes down for the same amount of wattage. So hopefully that gives you an understanding of the basics of how electricity works. And that works for AC and DC. So when you hear people talking about volts and amps and watts, they all are proportional to one another. If somebody says, I have 200 amp hours, a battery, whatever, it just depends on what voltage that battery is at to how much watt hours you're actually going to have. So we're not going to go too deep into that. We're really going to talk about how to get solar power to work for you and your RV. All right, so you get a couple solar panels. How do you convert that to power your RV? Let's say you have a couple solar panels up there and they're producing 28 volts at 5 amps, and you have a 12 volt battery. You can't connect those solar panels directly to the battery. That is too much volts for the battery to consume, so it'll just burn up your battery. So you need something regulate the voltage coming from your solar panels to input it into a battery at the correct voltage that it can take. So what you need is a charge controller. These are a device that converts DC loads into small loads for the battery to handle. Like in this instance, it would take 28 volts at 5 amps and convert it to 14 volts at 10 amps to push into a 12 volt battery. And the reason you would use 14 volts to put energy into a 12 volt battery is you need to have the voltage a little higher than the battery to push it in, basically. All right, so now you have a solar panel, you have a charge controller, it can charge the battery. So if you're not plugged into a pedestal, the only thing that's powered in the RV are the 12 volt system, the lights, the water pump, etc. Or the refrigerator, maybe if you have a 12-volt refrigerator. If you have a residential refrigerator, that won't be powered because that runs on 120-volt AC power. So this will get you by on your basics. If you don't need to run any of the AC loads, or maybe you just have like a small portable like Jackery or Delta Pro that you can plug in your other stuff and run certain things. But you won't be able to run your air conditioner, you won't be able to run your microwave, any of that stuff. So solar panels just provide power to the battery at this point. Let's say you want more than that. You want to be able to run an air conditioner. You want to be able to plug in and charge your phone. You want to be able to run the microwave, make a pot of coffee, all that stuff. What you're going to need next is some way to convert DC power, battery power, into AC power, which is called an inverter. We use Victron on our build here just because it's time tested and proven, longevity. They've been around for a while, but there's all kinds of inverters that you can get out there. Maybe we'll go into more detail about that in another video, but basically you just need an inverter to change your DC power from batteries into AC power to power air conditioner, microwave, all that jazz, your outlets. All right, guys, so that's going to cover the basics of how solar systems create power to run your RV. You can just run off batteries, or you can get an inverter and run other things, but it just depends on how heavy a load, how big of an inverter you get. Like we have 2 inverters running parallel. I know it may be getting a little more complicated, but it's not that difficult once you get a basic understanding. To dive into this a little bit deeper, you can also, the important numbers you're going to need to know from the solar panels are your VOC, which is how much voltage that solar panel can put out, and your ISC, which is how much amperage that panel is going to be able to produce. And then when you want to connect multiple ones together, you can either connect them in series or parallel or series parallel. I don't know how deep I'm going to go into that into this video because it's getting a little more complicated. Then when you're choosing a charge controller, they're going to have 2 numbers on them. The first number is going to be how much voltage can be inputted into the charge controller. That's the max input voltage that you can put into it. And then the second number is going to be the max amperage it can output. And depending on whether your battery is 12 volt, 24 volt, or 48 volt, is to how much maximum amount of wattage you can put on that charge controller. Like let's say you have a 50 amp max output for that charge controller. If you have a 12 volt system, that's about 700 watts that you could put out there. Because remember, 14 volts times 50 amps is about 700 watts. But if you have a 24 volt battery system like we do, you can use the same charge controller and run about 1400 watts, because 28 volts times 50 amps is 1400 watts. So that's something that you may want to factor in when you're building a system. If you're building something larger and you want to use less charge controllers, using a higher battery voltage will make a huge difference in how many you need, and it'll cost less. We've created a pretty big system here. We have 3,220 watts of solar on the roof. We have 2 inverters. We have 4 24 volt, 200 amp hour batteries. That's 1,600 amp hours in 12 volt batteries. We have videos of all those installs from the beginning. So if you go down, we'll leave a playlist down in the description here below of all the Victron builds and things that we've gone through. So you can see from the beginning, from installing the batteries to installing the first inverter, to just being able to run a refrigerator and 1 AC, to now we can run everything. So if you're interested in that, just check that out below. Hopefully you found this useful. If you did, please give this video a big thumbs up. We greatly appreciate it. And if you want to know more about full-time RV life, solar power, trucks, travel, towing, all that stuff, hit that subscribe button, notification bell, all that fancy jazz, and we'll see you guys in the next video.